Hello, everyone. My name is Mirna, and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, welcome to Mindalia live streaming, where thousands of people around the world gather daily to see the lectures and interviews organized by Mindalia TV. Today with us, Sonny Chase. It's our co-host, special person. Every Thursday we have her with us. She is not only the host of this show, but she is also the host of ABC Solutionary Sunday, and she is the chief strategist editor of the longest conscious life magazine in America. Before starting with Sunny and our very special guest, Betsy Chassie, we want to remind you that Mindalia's mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness in the planet. And you can help us by subscribing to our channel, leaving us a positive comment down this video, or sharing it with someone that you know that can benefit of the content that we're going to be talking here today. Also, while live streaming, we have an active chat. It's the screen you see here or under the video in case that you're following us from a smartphone. Through there, you're more than welcome to interact with us. We also want you to know that you can collaborate with Mindalia not only in English, but in Spanish and in Portuguese. We have three different platforms. In Spanish is Mindalia Televisión. In Portuguese is Mindalia Televisao. And in English, of course, Mindalia TV English. So if you want to collaborate, you can just go to our website. On the top, you are going to be finding a link. It says Collaborate with Mindalia. That link takes you to a form that you can fill out for our technical team to be getting in contact with you. Follow our different platforms, like, subscribe, go to our Facebook pages and Instagram accounts. When you do that, you are not only helping us reach as much people in the planet as possible, but you also keep yourself updated with the amazing information that we have there on a daily basis. I'm not going to delay this any further. We don't have a reason why. I just have the great pleasure of introducing and saying welcome to my dear Sunny Chase. Sunny, good
Good
morning.
morning. Good morning. It's about 100 degrees out here, so I'm ponytailing it today.
Well, same here. Finally, summer is here and we are cooking.
Well, and you reminded me yesterday that I want to just jump into the fact that it's International Nelson Mandela Day today. So I feel so grateful that we're able to have this conversation today. And we're going to be bringing Betsy Chassie in a minute. But I mean, that we can actually honor him perhaps today. And just to, again, I'm always liking to talk about the power of one and what each one of us can do, and to realize that we're honoring Nelson Mandela today. Talk about the extraordinary power of one and an example that he left for all of us with forgiveness and just, I mean, a myriad of things. It just kind of chokes me up to even think of him. So bless you, Nelson
Yes,
Mandela.
and as we were having in our messages today throughout the whole media, the message was thank you for your life. And yes,
Yeah.
thank you for your life, for giving the entire life towards a lesson of not only oneness, but particularly what moves me the most is the forgiveness and the
That's so
inclusion.
Yeah, so beautiful. When you were saying that, thank you, that was your message today. I was thinking of that song that Ricky Byers Beckwith sings and used to sing all the time at Agape. And I sing it all the time. It's sort of like chant. Thank you for my life. Thank you, thank you. And all the different things you can. Thank you for my joy. Thank you for my house. Thank you for my food. Thank you. And it's such a great thing to do all the time. And I love to do that. When I'm missing my keys and I can't find them, I'm late, and then something just tells me to put away that shirt, and I pick it up and I think, oh my God, there are my keys, and I never would have I never would have picked up that shirt, but somehow or another something tells me to. Even those little dinky messages that come to us.
Well,
So
I think
the
you just
huge gratitude and the little dinky gratitude.
exactly, yes. And when you do that, you are just aligning with the peace and the wholeness and the sustainability that this world is actually giving us. So the keys
Mhm.
appear. No wonder why.
Well, and also, we had such a great conversation last week with Sujan Datta about kind of, what are we doing here and how can we make a difference? And so much chatter about, even in the spiritual world, so much, sort of what I like to call spiritual arrogance and you know, sort of just spiritual chatter, and it gets to the point where it's almost too much. And so it's like, how can we make sense of our lives? How can we make sense of what we're actually doing in our spiritual practice? Even those of us who feel that we, you know, want to do that every day or every part of our life, and yet it can feel so overwhelming with all the different practices we can do, and then also what we see on the outside world. So a lot of it, I feel like right now, can feel like just not a good matchup. It just feels kind of chaotic. And most probably that's what's meant to be, you know? Don't you think?
Yes, I agree with you.
To break through to something new.
It is, yes, and something new or something old, but I agree with you. There's a lot of spiritual arrogance, and I think that the problem is, and it's not even a problem, it's more like a challenge. We get so much information. We are in the era in which there's information everywhere. You just need to look for it, and it all stays here. But it's
Mhm.
super hard to actually digest it and integrate it within
Mhm.
us.
Exactly.
So we luckily have people like our guest that you're going to be introducing very soon that
Well,
actually,
and as a matter of fact, that she's the perfect example of what happened, because she, you know, in the last sort of 10 years, really since The Secret, I'd say, which is now, I guess, 12 years maybe, if I can do the math on that. But she, along with a couple other people, directed and produced and was sort of the brain, you know, vision of that movie many years ago, What the Bleep. And then gosh, I think it was about, and so much happened with that, you know, so many thoughts, and with water, and with, you know, just so much came up with What the Bleep. And then Betsy was sort of like, okay, whoa, I don't know, things have kind of gone a little off the rails. And so she wrote this most rockin' book called Tipping the Sacred Cow, which I just love that book. And it's sort of putting a lot of these concepts, kind of diving in deeper, or putting them on their head, or moving them off the table completely, or, you know, just kind of a fresh start. Like, okay, we kind of cracked through, we brought a lot of stuff, you know, a lot of concepts quickly to the people, but then it ended up being like, okay, not quite. Let's just set the redo button or the reset button. And then now she's written another book. She's done a lot of things since then, of course. And so anyway, without a lot of edification, Betsy, let's just bring her on, and we'll let's bring her on, and then we'll drop in all the cool things she's done. I haven't given her a complete introduction, so we'll just kind of drop it all in as we go through. So
is there
good
even,
morning.
yeah, is there even time to give her an introduction? I don't think we have enough time.
But we want to say cool things about her all throughout the show, so that's
Yep.
probably
Oh, thank you. I like that. I'll just hang out with you guys every Thursday morning and get cool things said about me. Have fun.
better.
My gratitude. It's like, wow, I love that.
So Betsy, thank you so much for coming and, you know, helping us. I mean, I just love what you've done in your life so far. I mean, just, I hope what I was explaining is somewhat correct about, you know, a little bit of your journey and a little bit of our journey with you.
Yeah.
The journey you've taken us on.
Yeah, it's true. You know, after the bleep came out, I can definitely admit that I was spiritually arrogant. You know, it's hard. The funny thing that people don't realize is that I got hired to make the bleep, and I was like, I oftentimes say that I was like the least spiritual person on the planet, got hired to make the most successful spiritual movie of all time. You know, it's like totally out of nowhere. And so, you know, when you, as what I think what happens with people, just like anything, when you get a piece of information or you learn something, you get super excited about it. And then like you get so into it that you can't find wrong with it. You don't question it. That's my book. My book was called Tipping Sacred Cows, because that's part of what I realized I had made my spiritual journey. It was a sacred cow, and nothing could be questioned, and I was an enlightened master, gosh darn it, and that was the way it was going to be, and so, you know, then you're like, my life blew up in my 40s, and I was like, wait a minute, I am the creator of my reality here. Why is everything going to like heck in a handbasket? And that was my sort of awareness and awakening that like, oh, wait a minute, this is a little more detailed than crystal in the corner and wear the crystal on your neck and do all these other cool things that, that it became a realization that the spiritual journey is actually a process and work. And that's where, I've done tons of books since then. And that's where the new book and I'm just a contributing author. I'm the publisher actually, but I wrote one of the forwards. Chris Grosso, who did Indie Spiritualist, he wrote the forward for the book. And Jeff Brown, who's a wonderful writer and talks a lot about spiritual bypass, which is part of what this book is about, spiritual bypassing. He did an endorsement for the book. But so a big part of what we talk about in the new book with 19 amazing authors is all the different spiritual tropes and cliches. And by the way, I'm outside, I'm in nature, so nature will happen around me, just so everybody knows. But
we love it. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I love your background and where you are. We're having a little bit of a loop, a little bit of a feedback here with the echo.
I don't know why that would
Do you hear the echo, Sunny?
No.
No? Okay, then let's continue.
Okay. So the book is called All You Need Is Love, and it's sort of that in and of itself is a funny spiritual trope in our mind. And the cover looks sort of like a Facebook post. And the biggest reason, how I come up with the projects, I have a partner, her name is Kate Montana, and we were sitting around one day and we were kind of laughing and annoyed at some meme on Facebook that basically took a very nuanced and deeply profound concept and like squished it into 142 characters and was like, okay, here you go. Now you've got it. And I've noticed that is just happens a lot. And what happens when you do that is you lose the depth and the true, like what you said earlier, Myrna, about the sort of integration. Like you get the particular quote, which is the quote that I talk about in my chapter was, look, you're not responsible for how other people feel. Right. And I thought, well, okay, that's kind of true, but that also the spiritual bypass side of that is that now gives me permission to be a jerk and look at you and go, well, sorry, you're not enlightened. If you get reacting to my being a jerk to you, then you're just not enlightened. And that's turned into a nation of not gaslighters and narcissists. And so it's time that we really take,
amen.
we realize like what these things truly mean and how they work and how you can integrate them. Not just the meme that we can run around and spout and sound spiritually awesome, but the work that goes into it. And there's 19 chapters and they cover wonderful writers from all over the world, cover everything from like the idea of seeking enlightenment to perfectionism, money, abundance, manifestation. I mean, it's all these different concepts. And we kind of kick them in the boot a little bit and say, hey, here's the meme that you probably read on Facebook. And here's what the work is around it.
Ooh, I love that. So I think most people in our audience would understand what spiritual bypass means, but I'd love you to kind of go into that a little bit more.
Sure. So, I mean, I'm probably not going to give like the official definition because I've never actually looked it up. I just know what it is. But basically, the spiritual bypass is like the example that I just gave. You take a spiritual concept like the idea of feeling. And instead of digging in and understanding that it's absolutely true that I'm responsible for how I feel, I get to choose my feelings. And I'm going to do the work around how that manifests and shows up for me. That's not spiritual bypass. Spiritual bypass is when you go, oh, only I'm responsible for my feelings. And then you live in that. Or you live in, I'm not responsible for anybody else's feelings. And you live in that. And you've missed the deeper meaning. You've bypassed. You sort of straight rode up the mountain real quick, and now you think you're enlightened, when in reality there's a whole journey. There's valleys and cliffs and things that you're supposed to gather along the way, and you've missed the point. So spiritual bypassing is when you miss the point, you grab the concept and you run around and you wear it on your t-shirt like you've won the prize, but you haven't done the work.
Perfect. So that is what I think is going on all over the place all the time. And it's so You know, and I think that that's, of course, what I think a lot of, I know you know personally a lot of people who were in the movie The Secret too, as do I. And, you know, a lot of them feel that same way, where it's like, whoa, 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 you know, let's back up the whole thing. Because to say that, yes, we can create our own reality, and then there can be some real consequences with that, where people, you know, like, let's say they were
Oops, I lost her.
Yes, I think that she may be having probably a little bit of a connection problem.
I'll talk while we figure
But
her out.
no, she'll come back. I'm pretty sure. Let me see if I'm understanding what you're saying. It's basically the result of a culture of the instant results.
Yes.
I want to be Buddha, and I
I
am
wanna be
all of a
rich. I wanna
sudden,
be this.
yes,
I call it the McDonald'sization of spirituality. It's like you drive up to the drive-through window, you get to pick the cool things, you pick them, you go, you pay for your 3-day workshop, and you come out the other end enlightened.
exact. Zero process. I just
Right.
become, and in the end, it's pretty artificial. And I call it, you know how I like to call it, the PVC. You know,
Yep.
the plumbing PVC is
Yep.
plastic and empty.
Yep. And the truth is, you know, I don't want to diminish the 3-day workshops. Like, look, I love 3-day workshops.
Mm.
The trick is that one of the myths that we bust is that spirituality or enlightenment is something that is just achieved. And, you know, I don't know anybody who's enlightened. I'm clearly not enlightened, but anybody that I've read about who says they're enlightened spent years becoming enlightened. And what I think we've done the disservice, because we've convinced ourselves that we can get this quickly and then live a perfect life. And the reality is that's not it. Your life, your journey, that is the perfection.
Exactly. It's not an event.
Yeah, it's not, there's no ending to this race. And for me, when I gave myself that realization, when I finally was like, oh gosh, I don't have to get there tomorrow, that I relaxed. I was like, whew. You know, it's like, oh, once I get enlightened, then I'll be happy. No, it's like, no, I'm just going to create happiness as a core. You know, we all go through tough times.
Exactly. I love what you're saying. I love what you're saying.
But when you build a foundation of just like, okay, I can find peace even in this chaotic moment, that's the work.
I love it. I think it's also the realization of self-compassion and stop shaming anger, stop shaming sadness.
Yeah.
And when you actually allow yourself to be, I'm a big supporter of you. Sometimes you are upset.
Guess what?
You are upset and you're going to say some mean words. Yes, it's going to happen, but you are be aware of the fact that you're going to have to take them back, and that's going to have to come with an apology later.
Right. Well, and I think that a big part of what happened in the New Age, New Thought movement, and clearly this wasn't intentional, but shame and blame is huge, and guilt. And I'm part of the problem with that. You know, my movie's big message was you create your reality. How much blaming and shaming can we do, right? Like, that's a pretty big blaming and shaming. It's your fault. You created this. And the reality is, yes, you did create this. And it's not your fault. And it's not that you're bad because of it. And for me, when I realized, okay, I can take on that I created my reality without feeling guilty or shameful about it, then I felt empowered. I go, wait a minute. If I can create all that hot mess, then I can create something really cool. Okay, so I forgive myself for the hot mess, and I take those same tools that I used to make the mess, and I'm going to make this. And that's where you get wisdom. That's where the wisdom comes from, as opposed to what I think a lot of people are doing is just running around, grabbing crystals, hoping for one of these things to work. And deep down inside, I see a lot of people feeling really sad because they're not manifesting that $1 million.
Yes, I know. You know what? I also find a very empowerment idea. The fact that you're saying, okay, I created this whole, the big mess. Yes. And it was the mess that was obeying and serving the consciousness that you had at the moment.
Yeah.
So feel happy about it. It was serving you. You were creating a whole school full of teachers and full of
Right.
lessons and full of
Well,
and it was
exactly.
okay. It was great. So
And I call this the plane of experience. So, I'm one of those weirdos that I don't think this is it. Like, I'm currently in a box in a condo in Los Angeles. So this box is my plane of experience. And I get to play here. It's the slowest dimension. So it's one of the only, I think it's the only dimension personally. I don't know. I haven't been to the others consciously.
oh,
So
you haven't really?
I have, but not consciously, so I can't really confirm. But this is the plane of mass to mass, right? And so it's the place to play. It's the plane of experience. So if you only get to experience pure bliss and joy your whole life, well, A, that's awesome, good for you, but you miss out on everything else. And that's why we're here. We're here to have these experiences, because when you have deep pain, and I don't know one person on the planet who's never had a deep heartbreak. But when they have that deep heartbreak and you get through the deep heartbreak and you feel the bliss, that bliss is so much more juicier. And that's what that's what we're here to do. That's what this plane is. So I always tell people, have fun, laugh. It's only life. We go through what we go through, and we have an opportunity to look back. So it's not always easy in the middle of it, but you have an opportunity to look back and go, wow, that really sucked, man. Whoa, that was rough. And wow, I just got that experience, or I just got that piece of the puzzle. This is the way we should be looking at life, in my personal.
I'm completely with you.
It's time, and part of it is when you can take these spiritual tropes or the concepts, and you can take them and you can expand them beyond 142 characters. And, a lot of times, like, I feel bad for authors. I see it happen all the time. I'll see some quote and, they'll attribute to some famous author. And it's it's like, I look at it and go, wow, that they ripped apart that author's into, like, that author probably wrote an entire book about that subject, or an entire chapter, and you're squishing it down to this one sentence. And I think we do a disservice to ourselves when we just look at the one sentence.
Yes, definitely. And it's again, it's the culture of, wanting to get instantaneous result. And we've been running away, myself included, running away from the process, trying to run. We fear fear. We are afraid of fear. We are afraid of going through the heartache, through the pain, through the sadness and the sorrow and the mess that comes with healing. Look, but we can make it whimsical.
I'm here to tell everybody I'm almost 50. You'll survive the mess. I've done enough of them to know that there's never only going to be one mess. You're probably going to have a few. I hate to break it to everybody. You're probably going to have a few of them. So, that's life. And you get through them. And the way that you get, oh, good, Sunny's back. One of the ways that you get through them is by giving yourself permission to be in them, be in the mess. Just say, wow, this is kind of messy. I'm here and I'm present with it, and I'm just going to work through it. It actually works as an old lady, to anybody watching. I'm happy. People say, don't you want to be 20 again? And I'm like, no.
Please, no.
Not even close. But it's when you can say, this situation that I'm in is hard, and I give myself permission to be angry at it, sad at it, cry at it, yell at it, and then process it. It actually moves through faster. It goes quicker.
And we enjoy it. Sunny, welcome back. We missed you.
Thank you. I don't know what happened, but here I am. And so I'm just going to feel like I'm going to jump in because I didn't get to hear part of it. But I feel like I just feel like I know maybe what was going on. One of the things that, Betsy, you were saying as I was listening too is that one thing I'm having kind of fun with is just the creativity. In other words, I feel like for a while with the spiritual journey, there was kind of a density that happened, like you were explaining earlier. It was like, okay, I get the principle, and then it's just this like dense clay, and there's not a lot of space in it. There's not a lot of air in it, and there's not a lot of interaction with others. So I feel like now we're moving, at least I can say in my world, to a place of, and maybe I'm creating it for myself because I want it this way. I want more space. I want more bubbles. I want more, kind of room to move through it and go deeper, allow people to come into my world more, me listening more. I feel like I used to be much more of a talker, and I'm really enjoying the aspect of listening. And I even notice that sometimes I want to jump in and then I think, no, just sit back and relax. Take a sip of tea and keep listening. And I can't tell you how many times that has really been such a pleasure. And I've learned so much more about people. And then I also learned about myself. And speaking of taking a sip of tea, and then it also feels more relaxing. And then I feel like the people who are with me feel more heard. And honestly, they probably enjoy their time with me more because I'm creating more space. So again, back to that, we create our own reality. There are little tidbits little baby steps or breadcrumbs that we take along the way. Like I call it the spiritual breadcrumbs in my life. That's my kind of journey.
Well, and I would say that when you take the time, when you give yourself the time, how about that, to take some spiritual concept or idea or teaching, and you give yourself the time to truly digest it, as opposed to trying to get all of these pieces, right? Oh, I got to do this, I got to have that, and I need to meditate like this, and then I can get this piece. When you just go, gosh, I really want to do a deep dive into what this means, and you have the space to listen more, because I've noticed, even for me, I was a talker too. I still am kind of a talker, but I don't know that will ever go away. But you feel more comfortable in it. And so you don't feel the need to, jump in, because you get the bigger picture of it all. You get the wholeness of whatever, one of the people in the book, a woman named Christine Upchurch, talked about seeking. And that seeking became such a thing that she never got anything. She was like running, how you have those contests where you run through the grocery store and you grab as many things as you can, right? Like that's what we're doing, is we're grabbing all these, oh, look, meditation. Oh, look, mindfulness. Oh, look, crystals. Oh, look, feng shui. Oh, and grabbing it all. And we're just throwing it into a supermarket cart. And we've got a cart full, but we haven't eaten any of it.
Right.
And we haven't taken any time to sit down and drink a cup of tea and savor the wisdom.
Yeah.
So, that's when you can sit back and go, I don't need to push here because I have the wisdom.
I feel really, I totally agree with that. And I feel really lucky because 2 experiences I've had in my life really allowed me to I've done both. I've sort of been the seeker. I've been the one who feels really responsible to gather everything in my cart, and sometimes irresponsible about the fact that now I have this stuff in my cart and I haven't opened, I haven't received any of the gifts of them. It's like, oh, I bought this, yoga thing, but then I can't figure out how to get it on my computer to do it every day. And then it kind of wears on me and makes me feel, frustrated. Right. But 2 experiences in my life, I realized just talking to you right now, Betsy, that have been able to be such a centering thing for me. I was kind of tuned into my spirituality from the time I was really little, like 2. And my dad was very, very good friends with this neighbor of ours who was such a wise, cool guy. And they were such great, great friends. And this guy would come over and chat with my dad, and his name was Earl Nightingale. Do you know Earl Nightingale?
Mm-mm.
He's actually the one who was the first person who came up with the concept of The Secret. He was that guy. And he was very, very well known. I didn't, of course, we didn't know that. But then he was so wise and stuff. And I used to love, and I would ask my dad, when you guys are drinking martinis and stuff in the living room, can I just come in quietly and sit down and listen? And I would. And I don't know why a 5-year-old would want to do that, but I just love to listen to the adults talk. And then another experience I had to balance out the kind of groovy, slick, spiritual bit that we all enjoy so much in LA, for example, was when I lived in Africa, and we had a lady who worked for us, and her name was Ellen, and she was old as the hills and wise as I don't even know what. And she'd sit, I'd sit in the kitchen and she would just give me, maybe she had a 3rd grade education. I have absolutely no idea. But the wisdom that she had, and I was 16, 17, young enough to appreciate, but old enough to appreciate. and so those balances of realizing that wisdom comes kind of from everywhere, especially if we honor those people around us. And the idea that we do create our own reality, if we want to take that a step deeper, then we can say, wow, if I'm in a situation, and, for me to be quiet and to see, who have I brought around me? And then, of course, I agree with choosing to be around the people who make me feel good. So like you were saying about the spiritual bypass, it's like, yeah, and there's certain places I just don't feel comfortable being because I just don't dig it. Like, I'm just going to be real with myself. So I think kind of being honest with ourselves, really, truly honest, and saying, yeah, it's all good. It's all good. But there's certain things that I just want to be around. What we may say resonate with, but I'm sick of that term.
I'm in alignment with you. Our frequency is aligning.
Okay, quiet already.
I love it all. I don't know if some of where I'm at just comes from being around the space for 20 years now, which isn't actually that long. My partner in my publishing company, Rampant Feline Media, for anybody who wants to know, is she's in her 60s, and we're doing another book coming up. It'll come out maybe and it's really it's written all by women, and right now we're calling it Milestones. We'll probably get a better title eventually, but we're talking to women about the different decades of our lives. We're starting with women in their 50s. So 50s, we have a woman who's 91 who's going to write about in her 90s. And so there is I do believe there is, if you're open to it, a certain level of wisdom that just comes from being around this space for almost 50, 60, 70 years. Eventually you start to go, like, okay, in the light of all eternity, this does not matter. Trust me, I know. My kids I have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I can't tell you how many times, like, something so insignificant in their mind is the end of the world, And so some of that just comes from just being around and having the experience of it not being, you not being the end of the world, realizing like, oh, I woke up after that. My boyfriend broke up with me and I was sad for a week and it didn't ruin my entire life. Do you learn some of those things that come from just time, just being around? But you're right. One of the things that I noticed occurring within the space of the New Age, New Thought world, and I'm excited about it, and I've been screaming about this for 5 or 6 years, is we are getting back to a level of authenticity and vulnerability, which are things that, if you look at, it's interesting, if you look at any industry, and if you take the New Age, New Thought movement and you just put it as an industry like the automobile industry or the potato chip, right? If you track these industries, they all go through this sort of like really shallow, sort of very sort of quick fixy, like all of a sudden every chip brand had those 87 chips and they're all the same. There's a copycat process. Everyone's trying to find the thing in each industry. You know, for a long time, all the cars started to look the same, and everybody had the best. And so if you look at what happened in the industry of the new age, new thought movement in the last 10 years, What the Bleep Do We Know opened in theaters on the very same day that Facebook launched.
What?
Yeah.
Whoa.
I'm a nerd, so I like tracking these kinds of things. And so since the Bleep came out, we have really, the new age, new thought, spiritual industry has been in a bit of an identity crisis about, well, and so the first thing was gather as many people as we can. Well, how do you gather as many people as you can? You make it easy, you make it quick, and make it cheap. That's just business 101. Now we're getting to a place where we have amassed millions of people. There are millions of people on the planet. You can now say meditation in a corporate office. I know meditation coaches who go to major corporate offices and do meditation practice every morning. That would not have happened 10, 15 years ago. So now we're getting back, I think, to the place of like, okay, everybody, we got you hooked. You bought your crystals. You're all wearing you've got your essential oils. Everybody smells good and you all have pretty crystals. Now let's get to work. And that's, if you look at the reflection of what's going on just in society, this is where we are. We are at a crux of choosing. Do we want to live in the shallow, empty, angry, fearful space, or are we ready to do the deep dive? And the deep dive, we're in the deep dive, and a lot of stuff is coming up because we got to clean out some stuff, and that's where I'm happy to see the movement moving back to, I would say, because probably in the 50s and the 60s and even in the 40s, there's a really great author. You guys would love her. Her books are out of print, but you can get them. Her name is Vera Stanley Alder. And she wrote 3 amazing books in the 40s. She's a trip. She's a real trip. But that was substance. Like, that was deep diving substance. And we sort of, now we have the 3 easy steps to that deep diving substance. And now we're going to get back to, okay, we kind of lied. It's a little more than 3 easy steps, but you'll get there. And that's where the substance is now. I think we're getting there. That's why I think, I wanted this book to come out now. It came out on the full moon because the full moon was the awakening of new thought, new challenges, new dreams. And part of the way that you get to do that is when you take the time to really digest and integrate an idea or a concept that's going to help you.
Beautiful. Well, one thing that came to my mind when you were talking is, again, one of my favorite words right now, which is balance. So the thing balance. So the thing that I work with a lot in my life is I'm a bit of a social activist, and I do a lot of different things, and I come from a family of social activists and politicians and stuff. So I'm forever balancing the concept of, just even in my own heart, my own nervous system, sitting in my own world and raising my vibration and realizing there are a lot of people around me who can benefit from perhaps what I have, or letting me talk about what can benefit people. So basically what I'm saying is there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. A lot of people need a bunch of stuff. And it feels a little weird for me to just sit in my home and say, oh. So it's my balance of how to be in the world with my brothers and sisters and what's happening, and then, do my own spiritual practice. So I think that what I've found, coming from a very, socially active family, that, and then branching that with the spiritual, is I found the spiritual world, many people I knew, I don't want to be too overreaching, but to be a little bit kind of politically and all of that, unsophisticated, and just kind of in this, sort of other world. And I thought, well, gosh, I mean, we do need to bring that together at this point. I mean, maybe not need is the right word, but it would certainly be a way to be. And so again, it's that walk. And I've had this conversation, with people like Michael Beckwith, who are also, he comes from a social activist family, and he's a minister, so it's like, and he basically said, yeah, that's kind of the walk. Like that's no easy answer. But I think that's where we get into, a bit of the rub, a bit of the sand in the oyster, like what, it's interesting for me though. I feel like, there are days when I do just want to own myself into oblivion. And then sometimes, but then something comes to me where somebody says, wow, we have this opportunity to do this for these people who need this, or kids or animals or whatever. And it's like, you know what? I can do that. Like I can do that today. Or if it's obviously having somebody on the show where I can speak of it and all you guys out there can hear what we're doing, and then you can get active in your communities or in your home or, whatever. So that's kind of where I feel like the society that we're living in right now is, kind of yelling and screaming at us to work on that, sort of, as I say, the sand in the oyster, or the pebble in our shoe. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that humans have a tendency to compartmentalize. It's part of how our brains work. One of the things, I was having a really cool conversation with my son, who's 11, and he's a little bit of a brain geek like I am. And we were talking about how the brain actually works. And sometimes we have to remember that the brain is not some woo-woo magical universal. It's like a thing. It actually has a process and it works a certain way. Like it is. And so part of what we do my son and I are having this cool conversation about time, because he's like, well, what is time? And I'm like, well, time is a concept that we have in our brains because it's the only way that our brains can organize what the heck is going on out here. Because if we didn't, there would be no, the ground wouldn't be where it was. The sky, it would be a mess. So our brain has to do something.
It's a hardware limitation.
Yeah, it's like, there you go. So I love that. I'm going to use that line, hardware limitation. That was perfect. But what you can, so we compartmentalize, and so we put spirituality over here, work over here, social justice over here, and then we don't incorporate them. And for me, the way I teach my kids and the way that I live is it's none of it is separate, because it all kind of morals and ethics. What are those? So I ask my kids at least once or twice a month, what checking in, or what's your value? What is it that you value? What is it that's morally standards? What are your ethics? Are you operating in integrity with those things? Because when you are operating in integrity with those three things in the world by action, like my son and my kids know there's certain restaurants I will not eat at. They don't even ask. And they know that it's because they go against my morals, values, and ethics. So it doesn't even have to do with social justice or politics. Those words don't even come into my mind. What comes into my mind is that business doesn't operate in accordance with my values. And so I choose not to participate. And that's the way we have to start. To me, that's a cleaner way of looking at it than I've got to get involved in social. I'm very involved in, quote, social justice, but I don't look at it in terms of social justice. I look at it in terms of I need to speak up because my values and my ethics say what's happening there is not right, and I can do something. So
exactly.
The idea is when you can decompartmentalize these things and make yourself whole, because you're living from a whole place, then all of those things are constantly intertwined.
Nicely said. Yeah, I like that, and I think that's beautiful, and I think I think I do that too, pretty naturally. And then and then there are times when I feel like I'm really drawn to like actually, do a deep dive in something. And then, but for my nervous system, it's too, and my heart, it's too emotional for me to go very deeply with, let's say, formerly incarcerated women or whatever. But I'll be there for a bit, I'll do something, and then I move to another thing and another thing, because it's just for myself personally. because also like you, I believe in it all. I believe in, I don't believe in just dealing with one specific aspect, because there's so many hundreds of them, especially doing the show for 7 years. I mean, I know so much more about where I could put my energy. And so it feels better to me, just as my, the way I'm made up, to be a little bit kind of everywhere. And that feels better for me. Just like I feel like with food, when people get into an idea of like kale is the greatest thing in the world. I am a little older than you, so I've been following the the health and the nutrition and all of that, and the workout, what to do and all that for so many years, and I've seen the different fashions of what's happened. And so I'm kind of like, what it's about for me: moderation, balance,
Right.
the fun, the joy, the love. I mean, I'm really not into Cheetos. I'm not into things that have strange colors and are older than a year, in a package. But other than that, it's like, we keep finding out new things. And I think, again, it's back to the balance. And so that's what you're really talking about in your life, is balancing all this in your life all the time, which I think
right. I'm not a big fan of the word balance, but I have a question for Myrna, because, you're like, I don't know how old you are. I mean, you look like you're 25. So
thank you.
She does. She's a little older. Looks so young.
I'm gonna be 40 sooner than.
Okay, that's cool. I had a feeling you were in your 30s. I'm curious to know, because what is your, like, looking from where you are, when you see the new age, new thought movement and the spiritual journey, what is it? How does it get defined for you now?
Well, I come from a very unusual household. Actually, I've been in contact with metaphysics since I was very young. Ever since I was growing up in my house, there were like deep metaphysics books, and I always liked doing that. And I started doing holistic medicine when I was very, very young. At a certain point, my mom stopped just taking me to regular doctors. So to me, it's nothing new. I've been in this journey, even though I'm younger. I've been in the journey for quite some time. But the way I see it now is that I started actually respecting all the levels, because what for me may be overchewed, and it may be, something old, and I know all that. I do know that there's people that have never heard of it, and they are craving to hear it. So at this point, the level of processing, I do understand that there is baby food and there is, steak, and that comes with even this job. At some points, I was like, oh my God, and they're going to talk about that again. And my boss actually told me, he said, be very careful and respectful, because what for you could be old and stupid could be saving someone's life, because they've never had access to it. So at this point, I'm actually grateful. I know that there's a lot in this industry that cannot be proper, but if it's helping someone else, you know what? I'm thankful and I bless it.
Well, we all have a journey, and everybody has to. I think one of the things we all have to start doing is honoring each other's journey a little better.
Yes. And I had to be taken out of that, that high standard. And you know what? Yes. Oh, wow. Great. Thank you. Congratulations. So now you know that breathing can help you.
Cool.
But it's been, for me, it's been very, very, a very tough process, because that arrogance that you were talking about, that possessed me for quite some time.
We all did. Yeah. I think that's part of the journey. I think that you have to go. I think if you think about it, we have these moments where we rise and we rise and we rise and we fall. We rise and we rise and rise and we fall. And that's part of the journey.
Yeah.
When I look at people now and I go, wow, that dude is just like super arrogant. Whoa. I tend to go like, well, I hope he has a soft landing coming up, because he's gonna fall soon.
Yeah.
And that's just the process.
Especially when I see myself that I know so much, and then I look at me and I'm like, and you were like a brat complaining about that. So yeah, I'm not anywhere closer to the finish line than anybody else.
I don't think there is.
There isn't. You are completely right. Yeah.
Well, and one thing I'm going to just jump in for a minute because I know we are going to have to bring this to a close, unfortunately. We're having so much fun yakking and chatting and you know, just bringing it to the people, or Betsy certainly is. But one thing I want to do is just make sure, because I know we have like 2 more minutes, to say, Betsy, let people know how they can find you and all that stuff.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So my website is Rampant, RAMPANT, feline, rampantfelinemedia.com. So think of like the cat, that's what it is. And there you're going to find not only the book that we have out now, All You Need Is Love, but a bunch of other really cool books that we've published. And you can always find me on social media at Betsy Chasse. I don't do Twitter because it's like I can't keep up with that, but Facebook and Instagram, I'm there. And the book is on Amazon. And one of the things I always say to people is, you know, a great way to support your local bookstore is go into the bookstore and ask them to order the book for you. A small bookstore may not have the book on their bookshelves. They might. But if they don't, just ask them to order it, because that's a great way to support your local bookstore. They make some money, and then they also hear about our book. So you can buy it on Amazon.
Can you repeat the name? I'm sorry. Can you repeat the name of the newest book?
Yeah, it's called All You Need Is Love.
Great.
Perfect. And that's the name of our show today.
Yeah.
So Betsy, I just, you know, I always so enjoy chatting with you, as you know, and we've just got to do this again sometime, because I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface. And so I'll let you guys know also, of course, as you know, I'm Sunny Chase, and you can see me in Solutionary Sundays on ABC on Sunday, obviously at 9 o'clock, and in Whole Life Times magazine, and on iHeart and all that, those areas. And then of course Instagram and Facebook too. My last name spelled Chayes. And I also want to send a shout out, Kosa, because we are again honoring Nelson Mandela today, and that means we are walking in the light of God. So let us do that, and let's remember, let's do something for ourselves today that our future self will thank us for. So let's do that. And thank you, Myrna.
Wow.
Thank you, Dahlia.
Thank you. No, thank you. I think we couldn't have enough time to bring all the ideas that you guys have to share and to offer. Thank you for allowing us being a channel for your thoughts and your coolness. And I really hope that we can have a conversation like this one again. Thank you to our audience for liking, for subscribing, for being with us. And we're sending you a very big hug. Thank you again. Until next time.
Bye for now.
Bye.